All right, so I'm talking today with Les Norman. Mr. Norman, thanks very much for taking some time to talk to me. It's a real pleasure. For those of you that don't know who Les Norman is, I have it written down here. He is a former Major League Baseball player. He's also an entrepreneur, a motivational speaker, a broadcaster, an analyst, a husband, a father, and a man of faith. So does that kind of cover most of it?
It does. Just flip it in reverse order, and then we got the priority there. Yes.
Starting with husband, father, man of faith. Exactly. I agree. Exactly. So, well, I've known of you and known you through my son's baseball journey when he was younger. So, I'm fascinated by the game of baseball. It's been my favorite sport since I was a kid. I never played beyond the JV level of high school, so never could play it very well, but just love it and continue to love it as an adult. So, and there's a lot of things about it I think I understand, but many things that I don't. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, somebody that has played the game at the highest level and talks about it for a living. So bear with me if my questions are somewhat naive, but I just really want to know some stuff that I don't know other people that can maybe explain it. So
Sure.
let's start kind of with current, if you don't mind. So this new foreign substance policy that's going on. So, and I think I understand a little bit about it, but are you keeping up on that as well? And what do you make of it? I've seen they're expecting gloves and belts and hats, and it's always been illegal to put a foreign substance on a baseball, correct? Like the spitball era was going back 100 years, but what's this latest issue?
Well, the latest issue is any kind of substance that gives you a better grip on a baseball. And if you look statistically, over probably 5, 6 years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, they have this new thing that baseball has become so science driven and technological and all about statistical analysis and things like that. And so they have this thing called the spin rate, and the spin rate is based on how many revolutions the curveball spins by the time it travels from a pitcher's hand into the catcher's mitt or into the hitting zone. And they're able to track that scientifically with like radar and video, all different kinds of things. And so progressively over time here, over these, however the length of the study that they've done, the spin rates on some pitchers have been increasing over and over and over again. And therefore the strikeouts have been up. These guys are, if a curveball has this amount of spin rate on it, then it's going to break this much into 60 feet, 6 inches. And then as these years go on, there's this human element that says, well, you should only be able to do it about this much, but then you add foreign substances that increases grip and can really, you can hear the snap of my fingers. It's kind of what a finger does, is it pulls down on the seams and snaps a ball. Well, that's going to make a curveball spin even more. And so you get these hitters that have faced guys like, the two guys that have really come into the media side and have garnered the attention on the suspicion of foreign substances is the Dodgers' Trevor Bauer and the Yankees' Garrett Cole. And already both very talented pitchers, already have great movement on their fastballs, great movement on their changeups, great break on their curveballs. But as they've tracked these guys, it seems like each year the curveball's breaking just a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more, where I think there was a stat that I'd heard Jason Anderson on Sports Radio 810. He did a stat on, it was around 2000 a few years ago, and this many people had it. And then the next year it was 2250, and then this many people had it. And then it was over 2500, and then this many people had it. And I think maybe one or two guys, including Trevor Bauer, supposedly hit 3000 last year, maybe even early this year. And so look, people, you go back to the steroid era, and people have been cheating in sports, not just baseball, but in sports. Track and field had its people, football's had its people.
Cycling.
And you undergo testing all the time. But the bottom line is that there are people in every sport that are going to continue to try it. So you get ahead of science, science passes you up. Then you find a new way, and the players get ahead of science, and then science passes you up. So it's this chess game back and forth. So the idea is that baseball is trying to get into discovering who's cheating and who isn't to level the playing field. The sad thing is, and I'll let you respond after this, it's the right thing to do because you don't want people to cheat, because you want it to be a level playing field. But in my opinion, the motivation isn't there with Major League Baseball to simply just make a level playing field. The bottom line is baseball's about money. And when you had a shortened COVID season of 40, 60 games last year, and people, obviously they weren't in the stands, owners lost a lot of money across the board. And the bottom line is that strikeouts are only kind of okay, but home runs and runs are cool. That's what brings the most excitement to a game.
Right.
And in a business that's driven by money, and normally a multi-billion-dollar business, when those numbers go way down because of COVID and a lack of home runs, then in my opinion, Major League Baseball is going to step in and try to make a change. And it's under a little bit of the guise of, well, we're trying to just keep it fair. So that's why we're checking.
Right. And I heard the discussion, a couple of discussions too, about how the baseball itself has changed. Pitchers are just trying to get a grip. They don't want to, they're not trying to cheat. They just want to be able to use whatever sticky or pines hard just to get a better grip on the ball so they know where it's going to go. So, but I heard,
which, that's legitimate. It's definitely legitimate, but what a lot of people don't understand, I mean, take Clayton Kershaw, for example. He can hold 7 baseballs in one hand. I mean, I can hold 4 and I have big hands. I can palm a basketball. But some of these guys who are 6'5", 6'6", you have my hand and their fingers are like all the way up to here, like this high, like another inch or two. I mean, they're amazingly long. And so with the seams of a baseball, and with the stuff the umpires use to rub on it, I know they're sweating on that. Right. They got that mud, and you've got the rosin bags there too. And you're wiping it on your jerseys and all that, blowing on your fingers when you're allowed to do that. Or you step off the mound and do it and get the ball up. There are situations where you already can get a decent grip. So it's an argument that has enough validity or makes you think about common sense behind it that, okay, I get where you're coming from, but even so, they were still being able to grip it before that. So it's to the normal person that's a fan, they might make it a legitimate argument, but to people that already understand, pitchers been having pretty good control for years and years and years. Why all of a sudden is every single pitcher being voiced that? I mean, we had a major league pitcher for the Rays say that the reason he needs to possibly have Tommy John surgery, and it's the fault of Major League Baseball for not, for policing it and not allowing them to use substances for the grip. Trust me.
Was that Charlie Morton?
No, I think it was Glasnow or
Trevor Glasnow. That's right.
Yeah, I think he was the one. And trust me, his UCL didn't tear because he didn't have a grip of the baseball. His UCL tore because he throws the ball almost 100 miles an hour, and he throws a high percentage of breaking balls, which as you snap a breaking ball, it stresses that UCL every single time you do it, both a curveball and a slider. So when you throw a high amount of those, you're a big guy, you throw hard, there's a lot of torque on the joint. That's what causes UCLs to tear, not grip. Because you can throw a fastball and lose grip, and a fastball is not going to strain that. Fastball is going to strain your shoulder, because the human body wasn't meant to get up here and throw something that hard and that fast. So there's across the board arguments on both sides. In theory, it's a loose argument at best, but again, sticky substances don't keep guys from having control. Okay, could they have more control? Yes, but more so, it's going to make an uncompetitive and an unbalanced edge to the pitchers.
That just puts me on a topic we probably don't have time to go into, but that maybe another time. But the idea, the whole reality that pitchers today, the injury rates, how they're throwing the ball, how much they're throwing the ball. But when you look back in the old days of baseball, you had guys throwing, there's Wally Pyatt threw both games of a doubleheader in one day, and guys doing that incredible. Nolan Ryan threw 235 pitches in a 13-inning game back in 1977 or something or 74. You don't see that. They were throwing a lot back then.
Right, they were, and their training regimen was different back then. It wasn't a lot of weights. I mean, I know Nolan Ryan lifted some, but Nolan Ryan, after games where he would throw 100 pitches or a 235 pitch game, he was in on the treadmill right after the game, taking the lactic acid buildup and getting it out and getting his heart in shape. I mean, they ran poles, they ran laps, they stretched, they played long catch which kept their arm in shape. And, back then in those old days, they weren't making millions and millions of dollars. They made good money for the time, but they were also having other jobs in the off season
Right.
to continue to provide for their families, which also built up their strength as well if it was a high labor job. And so the reason why you're seeing more injuries now isn't because of anything except technology changed, weight training and education changed. So guys lift more weights, they're bigger and stronger. And weight training taxes the joints. I only played in the big leagues a couple of years and really didn't get into weightlifting after I retired. And since I've retired from weight training, I've had 2 right shoulder surgeries. I just had a knee surgery, and my knee surgery had nothing to do with me playing. I mean, I'm sure it wore it down, but it has to do with your body gets older, it gets beat up. And as you continue to try to train it like you're 30 or 25, but your body's really 52, something eventually is going to give. And so it's normal that the modern day athlete will blame different things, but you really have to go back and look at the past to understand what did they do by not having as much injuries, what has changed in the middle to where we are now, where guys throw harder, guys are bigger and stronger, but our bodies, there's still a human body. We still have the same blood, the same muscle tissue, and the same joints. And when you beat it down more than you did back then obviously it's going to give out.
And I'll just full disclosure here. I get geeked out on pitchers doing great things. That's the thing I love about the game the most. You can have all the home runs, blah, 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 but a guy throwing a perfect game is a rare, or a complete game now is a rarity. And that really geeks me out. So that used to be the common thing back in the old days.
Right. Absolutely.
So quick question. So with is one of the reasons batting averages are down is that players are trying to hit home runs rather than just make contact and put the ball in play?
Yeah, I think a lot of the small game is gone now. I was talking to a friend of mine who's an assistant coach. I coach my son's 16U team, and he said he went up to a Van Johnson game at Creekside Park the other day in the metro up near Parkville, Kansas City. And he said every time there was a guy on second and nobody out, those guys weren't trying to move runners over. Those guys weren't trying to bunt. They were trying to get them their batting average and try to attack the ball and hit it as far as they could. And so, again, that's another thing is the old school is somebody hits a double, you bunt them over, you hit a ground ball to the right side. Now, granted, if you've got a number 3 or 4 hole hitter up, they're not getting paid to move runners over. They're getting paid to drive guys in, but you're talking 7, 8, 9 lead off, maybe 2 hole hitters where they got a runner on second with nobody out, but even sometimes they're not trying to do it. So the game has absolutely changed. I don't think for the better in that capacity, because they're not trying to manufacture runs. Guys aren't playing into their role. They just simply want to be the guy that I can do this and I can do that. And I think that's why you're seeing batting averages down, run scoring down. You take my former team, the Royals, and you look at their 11-game losing streak they had, or the time they lost 5, won 1 game, and then lost 6 in a row. And you look there, they had numerous situations of runners in scoring position. I think at one time during the 11-game losing streak, they were 2 for 48 with runners in scoring position. And that's not just about hits, that's being able to move runners over. Right. And so bottom line is they were just everybody was trying to pull in a lineup that's predominantly right-handed. With a runner on second, you don't want to pull the ball. You want to hit the ball the other way. And it has definitely changed the scope of the game. Fewer runs scored, lot fewer batting, or a lot lower batting averages, and a lot more losses.
And some great players out there. We have 2 of them that are playing every day and they're hitting under 200. And I remember going to the K as a kid, and the first thing I would look at on the big scoreboard there is what's the player's average. That was kind of the mark of if this was a good player or not. And so Brett and Carew, of course, they were way high, but then if anybody was at or below 200, it was like, why are they even playing? And now every team's got 1 or 2 guys that they're productive, they're hitting home runs, but their batting average is really low.
Yeah,
you didn't see that 50 years ago.
Yeah, and I think it's because it's this weird mystique now in the modern day game where your batting average doesn't matter. if you're hitting home runs or it's about this game. And I know when you're hitting, you don't want it to be too mental. You don't want to think. You just want to go up there and react and hit. But I remember even in the minor leagues going up, and if my average was below 250 or 260, I took pride in that. And it wasn't that I was embarrassed for me. It was that obviously I'm not doing my job. Now, if I'm hitting 250, but I've got 80 RBIs and we're winning games, I'm absolutely happy with that because I'm doing my job of moving runners over and driving runners in. But again, if my average is low and I don't have a lot of RBIs and I'm just up there swinging for the fences, to me, that's somebody that doesn't have perspective in a team game. I know that big league contracts are individual things. Not everybody gets paid off of your contract.
Right.
But again, I have always found that as a former hitter, if I'm moving runners over, if there's a runner on third base and the infield's drawn in, I need to get a fly ball or a line drive through the infield. Or if the infield's back, I'm okay hitting a ground ball and making an out if that run scores, because what that does, it turns my brain off and helps me to relax and use my hands more instead of trying to muscle up and hit something far and then hitting a pop-up or striking out. And when I sacrifice myself and not worry about my batting average and think team, my batting average actually goes up because my hands are quicker because I'm relaxed. I'm not thinking and putting myself in a mental funk. I'm not guessing what the pitcher's going to throw and then being wrong 75% of the time. And then I end up getting the result that I want. And my average actually does go up. And so when you think team, you think selfless, you think move runners over and play traditional baseball instead of this home run, home run, home run, feast or famine, then things actually end up going in your favor.
Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to ask you about are unwritten rules of baseball. These rules that aren't in the major league, rule book, but clearly they're out there, and there's been a lot of debate about them. So one of which is the unwritten rule of, like, when you hit a home run, what would have happened if when you were playing, if you hit a home run and you stopped, you just stood there and watched it, you flipped the bat and you lollygagged around the bases, what would happen to you the next time you got up to the plate?
I would have gotten drilled in the rib cage or the head. There was actually an incident even in AAA in 1996 where I was batting third or fourth in the game, but the player in front of me was facing a guy named Jose Mercedes, who was down on Major League Rehab. He was playing for the Brewers in AAA. And ironically, the catcher in this game was Mike Matheny. He was in AAA for the Brewers at the time. And Mercedes threw a 95-mile-an-hour fastball, and the guy in front of me hit it about 500 feet. And it took him forever to get around the bases. I mean, he pimped it, and you could tell, and the pitcher was brutal. So I walked up to the plate, and I told Mike right away, I said, look, man, I get it. I had just been sent down from the big leagues. Just 2 days before that, we were in New Orleans. It was a horrible field. It was a tough road trip. It was about 105 in the shade, super humid. So I said, look, Mike, I get it. I know he's ticked, but save that 98-mile-an-hour fastball for that guy. I'm not down here to get hurt and get hit. And he's like, I understand. So he calls timeout, goes and talks to Mercedes. The umpire says to me, Les, don't go. You know I'm going to have to throw you out. I said, look, man, I understand. I will pay my fine. I'll take my 3-game suspension, but I'm not ending my career because the guy disrespected him. I understand he should be mad, and it was disrespect. You don't do that. But of course, the next pitch, 98, right in my rib cage or in the spine. I go running out there. There's this big brawl, and it ends. And I got fined and suspended. But that night, I actually got called back up to the big leagues because the guy got hurt, so I didn't have to worry about it, which was great. But
bruise and all.
Bruise and all. But back then there was that unwritten rule that if you hit a bomb, okay, great. Give yourself 1 second to watch it and then bust around the bases. And your home run, your run should have been enough of showing the guy up.
Right.
And if a pitcher strikes you out and does a little dance, the late Jose Lima used to do that all the time. If he's on the mound and shows you up, and then the next time you hit a home run, okay, then you could show him up, and then the playing field is level.
Right, evens out.
Back then, you just didn't do it in the game. I'm not a bat flip guy. I watch the NFL. Don't pull a Sharpie out of the goalpost that you stashed in the pad before that, like Terrell Owens used to do. Don't dance someone else's logo on midfield. You're paid to do a job, celebrate with your teammates, but don't go out of your way to show the other team up. It's hugely disrespectful.
And I think that's one of the unwritten rules that's changing, because I see players today like Tatis Jr., you name it, Baez, they just stand and watch it and do all sorts of. So I think it's, maybe I'm just an old fart now, but I clearly I think the younger players and generation are changing things. But the other unwritten rule I didn't realize was a rule, kind of like in football, when you're up 45-7 and there's 5 minutes left in the game, you don't throw deep, you just run the ball, you put in your second string, you just try to wind out the clock. But there was a case, I think it was the White Sox, where it was a Mercedes or somebody swung 3-0, they're up 15-1, and he swung at a 3-0 pitch and hit a home run and caused a lot of flack. The other team was mad at him. So are you not supposed to swing if you're at a 3-0 pitch, if you're up by a lot of runs? Is that another unwritten rule? I hadn't heard that one.
Yeah, it is. It's along the same lines as if a guy's throwing a no-hitter in the 7th inning, don't try to bunt for a base hit. I mean, you're trying to win, I get it, but there's this unwritten rule. Now, some people believe in that, some don't, and that's kind of on the extreme, but there are so many out there. And, when a position player is on the mound, the other team basically has already said, look, we give up, we get it.
Yeah.
Uncle, you're going to win. We got to finish the game out. We're just trying to save our bullpen. So 3-0, you swing 3-0, and especially if you hit a home run, what you're saying is that, I don't care what your situation is. I'm going to get me, and it's going to be at your expense. Then it becomes personal. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, it's an unwritten rule. Mercedes should not have swung at the pitch. Even if he would have fouled it off or swung and missed, it's still a sign of disrespect. Just him hitting a home run added to the disrespect. So there are these gentlemen unwritten rules that you do need to follow, because it's about respecting the game and respecting the other team.
There was one case, though, earlier this year when Rizzo struck out against a position player. So that was kind of, the karma went the other way. So that was a funny thing to see.
Yeah, but interesting enough in that, Rizzo and the pitcher were on the same page, and they were laughing about it.
They were laughing, yeah.
Count, yeah. So they knew each other, and it was all in fun. That's an example that, he didn't swing 3-0. But again, when you're a hitter facing a position player, you're not just giving up your at bat. So it's not that you shouldn't swing during the at bat, but if it's 3-0, okay, go ahead and take a pitch. Now, if it's 3-1 and you throw one in there, now I've got the right to come unglued. I'm not going to quit just because our team's up 20-2. But again, there's just little situations here and there that you have to take into consideration. But they made that fun, and it was a great highlight, and will be for some time. And Rizzo doesn't care that he struck out against him. It's not a big deal.
Right. So what is your feeling about the shift? This has been a big debate here the last couple of years, and I know what my thoughts are, but I'm curious, is it something that, baseball is looking at banning the shift potentially, or should they or shouldn't they? What do you think?
Well, I'm like you, I'm old school guy. And so the only reason the shift came in was because somebody went into the analytics of trends of where a guy hits and thought, what, if we put 3 guys over there, he's not good at hitting the other way. He's dead pull hitter. So if he does, he's earned it, but he's never proven that even with a shift that he's gonna, it's increasing the chances. It's kind of along the lines of Moneyball, and how that whole thing worked. And so I'm old school. For me, I would love to see, you have to have 2 guys to this side of second base and two fielders to this side of second base. The outfielders need to stay on the grass unless it's a 5-man infield. Then he's allowed behind second base on the dirt. Okay, that's fine. Because, you ought to be able to make that kind of move based on if there's a guy at, going to score from third and you're going to lose. Okay. But this whole shift thing for me, I'm 50-50 on it. I still love the old school. However, I remember back when Mike Moustakas was with the Royals, and people were complaining about the shift, and he kept making outs and pulling right into the shift. And George Brett said, I almost hit 400 one year. I probably would have hit 420 if they'd have shifted on me, because I just would have hit a ground ball to third base. And yeah, he's George Brett, and he could do that. Right. And not all hitters could do that. But I'll tell you this. I was decent at going the other way. I could hit behind runners when I gave up myself, and I was a good bunter, so I could do that no problem. But I guarantee you, if they would have shifted on me, I would have had a lot more hits in my short time in the big leagues, because I would have just kept working and working and working, would have gained valuable practice experience in game, because I don't want to pull and what's guaranteed is an out. I want to go to the hole. So what one old school guy might think they should get rid of it, on the other side of that, the defense is giving you an opportunity
Yeah.
to gain batting average points. And so I think it all depends on how you look at it. I would have taken it as a challenge to, hey, thank you. You're going to make me a better hitter.
Somebody, I forget the famous line, that hit it where they ain't, or something like that. Was that Yogi Berra or somebody
Probably
said?
Yogi, yeah.
Yeah. That's what I thought too. Now, I did see a picture. Somebody shared a picture of the 1946 World Series, and I think it was the Cardinals against the Red Sox, and the Cardinals actually used the shift against Ted Williams in that series. So it's not a new thing either.
Right.
But it seems very prolific now.
Yeah, they didn't have the guts to stay with it back then.
Right.
It's a different political landscape. They didn't have social media back then, so it probably wasn't as widespread. You heard about it on the news wire or read about it in the paper, but you didn't see it 30 seconds after it happened on Instagram or on Twitter or posted on Facebook or something like that. So it's definitely a different generation for sure.
So let's continue down that path a couple more minutes here. Another game thing for me, or things that have changed about the game, is the pace of play. And I know we've heard a lot about it. Baseball's been trying to address this for a long time now, but routinely, I read old box scores as a hobby because I'm kind of a nerd. And from the 1890s, especially in those early 20th century, those games were all under 2 hours long. If a game went over 2 hours, you were lucky. And so, or not lucky. But I actually saw an article in the Topeka newspaper from 1908 that there was concern that the baseball games were too short. So completely come completely full circle now. But what do you think about today's pace of play? Does it bother you? Is there some way we could change it, or should we just not worry about it?
It's never bothered me, honestly, as a player. I know I'm not sitting there as a fan, but look, the longer people are in the seats, the more the stadiums are going to make. So if the game goes a little bit longer, people are going to buy more food, buy more alcohol, buy more souvenirs, spend more time in the Hall of Fame, do all those different things, at least up to maybe the seventh inning when alcohol sales go off, and then food goes all the way to the end. So, I get Major League Baseball and some fans complain, but the way I see it, if it's a 15-2 game, okay, let's pick this thing up a little bit. We know what the outcome is going to be. Let's roll. But if it's a 4-3 game, then naturally it's probably going to cruise a little bit more. So it's very subjective. Major League Baseball is going to listen to the fans. And if the majority of fans speak up and say it's too long, then they're going to try to do something about it. Now, here's the deal, though. They put in the clock that's supposed to go between innings. And you see the clock out there when you go to Major League games, you watch them on TV, but they don't police it anymore. They instituted it, but they don't use it. When's the last time in the last year and a half you've heard anything about them actually penalizing a pitcher or having stay in the batter's box? They talk the game, but then now they don't police it anymore. So if you institute it but don't take it seriously, then it's just going to go away and you lose credibility. So if they're going to do it, okay, that's fine. If that's what the fans want and you want to increase it. The only problem I have, or decrease the time, the only problem I have is that if you're going to try to make the game shorter, don't change the rules of the game. They talked about, let's move the mound back, or let's make the bases bigger.
I have that on my list. Yeah.
Perfect. And we can go there. I didn't mean to segue into a different
topic.
Go
for it.
We'll do whatever. But yeah, there comes a time, there are changes in the game that can make things better. Keep 1 foot in the batter's box. That's one. Just step out to get a sign and then get back in there. That would increase a lot. The old Nomar Garciaparra, Mike Sweeney did it.
Locaine.
Locaine was huge in that, always fixing this and doing this. Right. If you watch, I'm a big tennis freak, and so the last French Open, I'm watching Rafael Nadal, who's won the French Open. We know that's on clay, and he's a clay specialist, but he's got these nervous tics that every time he bounces the ball, it's here, 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 it's here. it's here, it's here, it's here, and then he goes, and that is every single time he serves. Now, in a match that lasts over 4 hours, if it goes 5 full sets, how many times are you watching him? Could it go 3.5 hours if he didn't?
Right.
It's like he's given signs
He's
at
given
third
the
base.
signs. Yeah.
Right. So if it's a nervous tick that he can't help, then there's nothing wrong with that at all. But if he just does it to do it, Brooks Koepka, when he plays golf, he lines up his putt, then pulls up his putter. Like if this is the face of the putter, he takes his finger and rubs, clears the putter, and then he goes down and gets ready to putt. So that doesn't take a lot of time. But again, the bottom line is, if you want to speed up the game, speed it up, but don't change the nature or the rules of the game that now make it a completely different game. That's not right. It's disrespectful to our forefathers who not just invented the game, but made the game what it is in the Negro leagues, the early big leagues, the old school guys that played. It's been 90 feet on bases, 60 feet, 6 inches on the mound. Let's keep the basics where they are and just tinker here and there with things that don't change the rules.
I agree. I mean, they did a piece on ESPN about, they're actually did a study about moving the mound back, the pitching rubber back, and they were testing the effect that it would have on arms to see if it would cause more injuries, blah, blah, blah. So they're tinkering with that. I just feel like that's something they shouldn't go there. Just leave it at 60 feet, 6 inches.
Yeah, I think you'll have more shoulder problems. You'll have more elbow problems. Guys will be striding out and trying to push harder, which means the inside of their back knee, their MCLs will take more strain. Their landing foot on their front, so their front foot, the ACL, is going to be the one that's stretched. You're going to see more groin pulls. You're going to see more hamstring pulls. And you're going to see guys that are pitchers just loaded up on the DL. And then you're going to complain that too many frontline 1 and 2 and 3 starters are hurt. And so you're having to call guys up from AAA and the quality of pitching isn't as good. Then stop tinkering with the game and setting up players to get injured.
So what about the universal DH? Do you think that's something that we should go to, or keep the pitchers hitting in the National League? What do you think about that?
Look, I'm indifferent. And the reason I'm indifferent with this, I'm a hitter. I'm not a pitcher. However, watching guys like Bumgarner and Scherzer and Kershaw and some of these other pitchers, Owings, some of these pitchers that can actually hit home runs. I mean, it would be kind of cool to see. Now you have guys like Zach Greinke. He's a pretty good hitter too. But then you have other guys like, I want nothing to do with this. I don't want to hit. I don't want to swing a bat. I'm here to pitch. I'm a PO. So you've got that handful of pitchers that are still good hitters that they advocate, no, we want to hit. But again, I'm not barking to pitch. Back when I played, it's not my area of expertise. I'm a hitter and an outfielder. And so I want to throw guys out. I want to run and catch balls, and I want to get some hits and help my team win. So I don't care what they do, but I really don't want to see a pitcher that doesn't care, just going to swing at nothing just to get the at bat over with. If he's not going to compete, then if there's enough guys in the NL that don't want to compete, then institute the DH. But if then you're going to invest some time in teaching the guys that don't necessarily care how to hit and make them take it seriously, then okay, then I'm good with pitchers hitting. So just make it, incentivize it for pitchers that don't want to hit somehow. So either way, I'm fine, but I'm more apt, if I had to make a decision, to use the universal DH, because I want to see guys hit.
I go back and forth on it, and when a pitcher can hit, it is compelling, but at the same time, and the strategy that the National League managers have to go through, and especially late in the game, I do think it's kind of interesting. But at the same time, I love all the careers that the DH has helped to expand, even like guys like George Brett and Pujols and things like, well, Pujols has been in the National League, but even with with not having the pitchers hit.
Hitter. Pujols, but you're right though, in the sense that Pujols, as he gets older, can't play very good defense because his knees are gone. However, he can extend his career like he is right now, like with the Dodgers, and maybe he's not a DH, he's playing first base, but even after this year, if he wants to play one more year, but nobody wants a broken down first baseman, some team that's rebuilding is going to need a DH type hitter who can mentor younger guys. And Pujols is that perfect type of guy. And so you can hang on another year or two and still be of value, even if your numbers are down, to be able to fill in a DH role.
For sure. So here's another thing that I know that the major leagues experimented with, not necessarily at the major league level, but in the minor leagues. But where are you with umpiring? And we have the technology now. You see it on TV to analyze whether this is a ball or a strike, and it shows you in the zone. It's really very detailed in the graphics. Do we really need human beings back there with their biases and or flaws, or should we just go to strictly a computer-based balls and strikes? Or do you like the human element?
I like the human element of it, and I don't think you should go straight to technology. And I also do like a little bit of technology with the box there, because look, I'm not anti-umpire as human beings. I'm anti-umpires that lack accountability. You know, one of my good friends and actually a spiritual mentor of mine is a major league umpire. He's a crew chief. Ted Barrett is one of the coolest dudes on the planet. He's a strong man of faith. This is a guy that sparred with Tyson and Foreman as a boxer. I mean, I'm telling you, this guy has run the gamut. He's so unbelievably interesting and cool and all that. And we talk about this all the time, but we've got a differing opinion because he says there is some accountability, but yet there's not accountability, because you'll see a guy that blows a call, justifies it on TV. Everyone knows the call is blown, and yet there's no accountability, because sometimes it really does change the focus of the game. Now, if an umpire is at a certain percentage of, okay, he was only 91% accurate tonight. Okay, so you report that he was 91% accurate, but do you suspend him for a few games? Because there's no incentive for these guys to lock in. Now, I'm not going to mention any names because we know that that does nobody any good. But I remember back in the 90s where a manager got into an argument with an umpire, and I was coming up to catch the pitcher between innings. I wasn't in the lineup. And I heard our manager was barking, and this particular umpire was saying, well, I've got tenure. What are you going to do about it? And that kind of attitude right there shows you that I don't care if I'm a bad umpire. You can't do anything. I'm protected. And therefore, I'm just going to keep doing it the way I do it. And so until there's accountability, there's always going to be an us versus them mentality. But if the players know that there's accountability, then they understand that you can't accuse an umpire of any kind of bias if there's accountability there, because he knows there's going to be a repercussion. If I go to a particular, any job, whether it's a good paying job, low paying job, you know, if I'm a doctor and I have a 90% success rate, then something might be, some alarm might go off that maybe I need to rethink my license or something like that. Now, baseball is not medicine, and I would never compare the two. But again, the idea is if I think umpires need to stay in it for the human element, but there has to be more accountability be taken in place, because it really makes hitters angry and players angry, pitchers too, because they're trying to be the best at their job. And when they work hard and earn something that's within the rules and it gets taken away from them and there's no accountability with it, that becomes a problem. I mean, last thing I'll say on this, you get a guy that's hitting 220 and he earns a walk, where a lot of times, you know, umpires say that you look at that box that's on TV and here's the line, and umpires will give on the line and then the ball, maybe one ball outside of it, because that allows for human element. But just because a guy's a rookie and you've got a veteran on the mound and the pitcher, instead of here, throws it right here and you call it a strike just because that guy's a rookie or you want to speed the game up a little bit. Now, because that guy made an out, he might be the easy choice to get sent back to AAA, and he may never come back again. Or if he earns that walk and starts to allow the coaching staff and the people in the organization to realize, okay, he's getting better. He's finding the zone. He's doing his job better. Then maybe he stays a little bit longer, and maybe he collects 2 or 3 more paychecks, and maybe he's now able to take care of his family for a longer period of time, a little bit better. And those things, I think, sometimes just don't get taken into consideration. So accountability to me is key.
Well, and I think you touched on it just now, how hard this game is. And I think, like I say, I've never played it past youth, but just hitting a baseball, a major league baseball, has got to be the hardest thing of any sport for one human being to do. And another human being to throw it at that velocity and to a tiny little target from 60 feet away is hard to consistently is very hard to do as well. So how
Right,
did
and it's
you,
not that big.
how did you, and I know we're running close out of time here, but maybe we'll wrap up with this little element or this topic of it's a game of failure. How did you deal with failure? How do you teach your son to deal with failure on a daily basis? You're not going to get a hit every time up. You're going to get out more than you get a hit. And
Right.
it's such a humbling thing.
Yeah, it was. I'll just say two quick things on this. I became a big leaguer. I mean, I had some talent, and that obviously is really important. I mean, I could run fast. I could throw a ball 400 feet when I was 16 years old. And I once went to a scout camp where they actually did velocity at your release point from outfielders. And I was well over 100 miles an hour from the outfield as a skinny kid. So I had some talent, but the things that really helped me hit a baseball eye to eye was there was this kid named David Kranz. And David and I in this small town in Illinois used to take this rubber ball, which part of it was cut out. And so it would curve all over the place. It would drop, it would rise. And there was this old telephone brick building in this open field. And so we would take a rock that resembled chalk and draw the stripes on it. And we'd put this thing out there. And if you hit it past this first thing, it was a single. And if you hit it past the second one, it was a home run. So singles and home runs. And we would just air it out as hard as we could. And we didn't play video games every day in the summer. We went outside and just played fast pitch over and over again. And even when we played basketball, it was developing hand-eye coordination, and football, developing quickness and strength, and all the other things you did. Kickball. I used to take a tennis racket and a wiffle ball and hit it as high as I could, throw the tennis racket, and then act like I was my favorite outfielder and
Go
throw
field
the
it. Cool.
Yeah, and field it, hit it, field it, throw a ball against the wood that was over by the target, and I threw him out. And you just did those things. So when you played and you developed hand-eye coordination, you got better and better as you went along. And so I did have great coaches. I played baseball competitively, but I didn't play 150 games in the summer. I was just outside being athletic and developing all those little things. And so, I got to be a part of that. Now with my sons, the one thing I taught them that I failed at a lot was sometimes I wasn't mentally strong, because in my early days, I held baseball here, people here, and God somewhere down here. And so with my sons, I've been able to teach them through my failures that, God is here, people are right after, and then everything else just trickles down after that. And so when my oldest son doesn't play anymore, he's in college and going to be a nurse, but he plays softball and loves it. I still coach my 16-year-old, but he understands if he makes an out, so what? The only thing that we are accountable for is honoring God with our ability, and are we having fun playing it? Because if we're not going to do those two things, or just one and not the other, there's no reason to be playing it. And so I coach him because he wants to play. He doesn't need to be me. Neither one of my boys need to be me, but they realize they've been given a gift. Let's honor God with it. So that means we work hard and prepare, give our best. But if we're not having fun, then we got to just hang it up. And if you ask both my boys, they understand that their identity is not wrapped up in what their dad did. Their identity is not wrapped up in how successful their I don't even track batting averages, and I never will, because I don't want them thinking that, well, these 10 guys are higher than me and I'm down here, so 10 guys are better than me. That doesn't make any sense. They know that their identity is in who Christ says they are, and everything else is just fallen from the wonderful rainfall of that, getting soaked in that identity. So that they're having fun, they're enjoying themselves, they're exercising and growing, and that's all that matters.
Awesome. Yeah, I can't imagine, having that faith, any other game where that faith can be more beneficial than a game like baseball, where you have so much adversity all the time, and at any level. So,
yeah.
Listen, I really enjoyed having this opportunity to talk with you. I know we got to knock it off for the day, but maybe we could do this again sometime. I still have a few other things we could talk about next time.
Well, there's no maybe about it. If you'll have me back on, I would love to come back on and do this. I could do this all day as well.
Well, it's great to speak with you. I wish you all the best, and let's try to make that happen soon.
Absolutely, brother. Thanks for having me.
All right. Blessings to you. Bye-bye.
You too.